Hetepu Haru Nefer, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum. This is Kasak Ma Keparu with another broadcast for you. Let me just test that mic out. Testing, good. Okay. Got to make sure because last time I did the broadcast and I didn't have any sound. But anyway, today I want to talk to you about a very important subject matter. This one is about rediscovering your past life. And this is really important because your past life ties into your present life, and I'm going to explain why. But before I do that, please hit the like button and share this video with family and friends because we really need to get the information out there because a lot is being kept from us. And we're living in a state of stupor where we're ignorant of things, and because we're ignorant of things such as death and the afterlife or things of that nature, we are afraid of it, and this society is built upon fear. So let's talk about this, all right? So you'll find a lot of those people who want to play spiritualists or play New Age. They'll talk about certain things, but they won't dive deeply into it, or they won't live the life. You know what I mean? So consequently, they have a skewed view of things, and they actually are relating things to other people's disciples or followers, incorrect information. So what I want you to get first and foremost is that your past life is of paramount importance. This is something where you must know who you were, what happened, and what's the next step. So let me just give you this overarching or overall view of what happens. You live many, many lives simultaneously. It's not a linear process. We're caught up in this whole linear thinking because we're living right now polarized in left brain thinking, okay? And we're also in this realm of space-time, which is linear, that we exist in on this fourth dimensional plane. So you live your life and you pass on. When you pass on, then you go before Tahuti and you make what we call a pre-life agreement, which basically determines your next life, your destiny. It's a destiny, okay? And the reason that you do this is because the Supreme Being, God, Yahweh, wants to explore a theme with each individual life, right? Now, the thing about this is, it's kind of like you're being sent on a mission, and you have to accomplish that mission, meaning you have to explore that theme successfully. When you explore that theme successfully, and as in the Kemetic mythology, you go before the scales of Ma'at, and at that point, they review your consciousness, or Tahuti reviews your past life and whether or not you lived up to your agreement. All right. Now, the thing about this is, it's not about doing good. That's a given. You should be doing good. We're not talking about that. All right. We are talking about not only exploring a specific theme, your destiny or incarnation objective, but what we are talking about here is learning to detach from things. Now, you'll notice in, like Buddhist religion, a lot of like Asian religions, non-Western religions, they talk about, getting away from material things, right? And because a lot of Westerners who are left brain interpret that literally, which is why they also interpret the Bible literally, they'll start going into these religious circles and cults, and they start giving away all of their possessions. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. What you're supposed to be doing is live with your possessions, but not become attached to these possessions. Do you understand what I mean? And it's not just the possessions, it's everything in life. It's going through and experience it, understanding that it's all just an illusion, and not becoming attached to anything or body. Okay, let's understand that. That's very important. And the reason being is because when you pass on and you go into the other realm, one of the things that you're going to be judged by, and which will set up your next life, is what are the vices? What are the things that you're attached to? And those attachments are going to be the basis and a starting point of how your next life will be. Do you understand? Now we have to look at it in such a way like this. You've had many past lives, or let's put it more correctly, I'm sorry, you are experiencing at this particular moment many past lives, and you're gathering information that's coming to you from those past lives, and you don't realize that it's happening. Okay, but the thing about this is that all of the troubles that you experience in this lifetime, and you wondering where these things are coming from, are a direct result of the past life. So you may be experiencing these things, which you may call hardships, challenges, bad luck, whatever, people get married, divorce, lose all their money, their kids get taken away, things of that nature. But in this society, we are so blind and removed from spiritual culture that we are not told that the reason these things happen is not because the system, and that's part of it, but the real thing is everybody is working out their karma. So these things that happen to you are based on what you've done in a previous life. And because your mind was wiped, because once you go before Tahuti or the scales and you recite the 42 negative confessions, when you make the agreement and you make a contract of what your next life will be like, then your mind is wiped so that you start fresh, so you don't remember anything. So that's how that's set up. But you have to keep in mind too that you should understand that past life in a way. There's a way to do that. And in ancient cultures, when a child was born, they went before the priest, and they had a whole initiation ceremony, and the high priest would do an astrological reading to determine their sun and moon signs. They would do a destiny reading, and that child would then be put into a particular clan, whether it be Ma'at Sebek or Tahuti clan, and they would be taught by the clan. And then the child's expertise in certain career fields would be determined so that from a very early age, the child could now develop into a prodigy. That's how things were supposed to work. Now, because we're living in a corrupt society, all of this information about past life and who you were and the troubles you're having now don't have a relationship to the past life, that's left brain thinking talking, are just wiped away, just overlooked and not considered. Meanwhile, life is kicking your butt, and we're asking why. So you are supposed to have this information available to you so you don't keep repeating mistakes. But that is what the oligarchy wants. They want you to keep repeating the same mistakes over again. They don't want you to explore your theme. They don't want you to live your destiny. Because if you don't explore the theme that Netter God wants you to, what will end up happening is that when you pass on, you will come back again and have to repeat things. And you will repeat them and repeat them and repeat them until you learn from that. Because your oversoul is collecting the information so that you can, the experience is gathered and learned from. But see, that's the whole key to it. For you, your goal is to become Oser, and that may take many lifetimes. But if the ruling elite can keep you from exploring the theme, then they can keep souls reincarnating or recycled. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be recycled all the time and having excessive lives. So if you want to explore the spiritual aspect of life, then it's of paramount importance that you start the journey on understanding who you were in a past life. What things did you leave off that you didn't complete? What do you have to continue? There are certain situations where people were in love in a past life and they were able to get together with their loved ones. And now they come into this lifetime and there's still that urge to find that soulmate. But because they don't understand anything, they explore that urge in very bad ways, maybe like sexual perversion or always being needy or codependent, things like that. But if you knew that you were in love in a past life and you need to find that person again and get together in this life because there's nothing holding you back, then you will feel complete. Now, here's the kicker. Everybody that you were experiencing or interacting with in your past life, most likely in some way, shape, or form, are friends and family members today. Because that karma that is coming back will bring with it the people close to you so that you can go to the interaction again. But you don't know that. And this is sometimes it comes to you as an intuitive thought, like, I really feel close to this person, or this person doesn't like me for what, no matter what I do, I can't get in the good graces of this person. Why? Because you were enemies in a past life. And you're carrying that karma on now. And there are certain people who are experiencing bad luck in this lifetime. And that is because they're paying off a karmatic debt from the past lifetime. And I know it sounds unfair, but you have to look at things in its totality. And it also checks you. It makes you want to say, all right, I've got to do everything I can do. In other words, do unto others as I would do unto myself. And explore my theme and not be attached to anything. Because you know down the road in the next life, you're going to catch hell if you don't conduct yourself in a proper way in this life. Now, there are a couple of ways you can discover who you were, and what the theme is you need to explore in this life. And the first is going to a diviner, and that person can do an oracle reading and tell you, hey, you know what? This is who you were in the past life. This is the trauma, or this is the things you went through. And here's the theme you need to explore in this lifetime. And when that is revealed to you, everything makes sense. Meaning that you'll start to see the issues that you have now in this present life directly tied back to the past life. You'll say, oh, I'm just continuing with these issues I left off in the past life. Now, let me give you an example. And the best way to look at this is look at children, because children, they still have an attachment to the emotions and the feelings and the memories from the past life. So as a child, my mother was like, you just love to collect bugs. She was like, you were fascinated by bugs. Well, I learned in the past life, when I did the research, that I was somebody who studied insects. And I was really into them. And I carried that over as a child for a love of bugs and things of that nature. So do you see where I'm coming from? So children, you'll notice, have certain phobias or fears or certain predispositions to certain character traits. And you wonder, they've only been here for 2, 3 years or whatever. How could they develop these specific traits? And that's because they're bringing them over from a past life. And in fact, children is what I've said before, we consider as ancestors, because they're really recycled souls, they're ancestors. And we have to treat them accordingly. So the other way you can discover your past life is to ask simply, who was I? What do I need to do? What troubles did I have in my past life? Now, I've talked about this before, that we live in a reality that's energetic, it's dynamic, it's fluid. And there is really no outside, because everything that happens really within us, and is projected outward into what we would call a three-dimensional experience. It's kind of like a holodeck from Star Trek, or a hologram, which is more precise. And because the consciousness within us is Osir, It responds to our commands. So if you're asked something, it will respond and give you the answer in signs, in symbols, in what we call a synchronicity. You may be saying, well, who was I in my past life? And suddenly your TV turns on and there's a Western program on. Well, you were a cowboy or a cowgirl. Do you see what I'm saying? But you have to learn to read these signs. And this is how our ancestors developed to such a high moral caliber, because they knew that the reality was energetic. So when they saw these signs, they called them omens. And they were very well adapted to reading these omens or these signs. And this is a lost art. Because when you learn to read pictorials or images or archetypes, then you're tuning into a whole different realm, a whole different dimension. Now you're gaining not this superficial knowledge, but deep, deep knowledge and access to a whole new world, which I coin as subcommunication. Subcommunication is a communication that goes on below our awareness, and it takes your third eye to pick up on it. Just as, for example, you have a male and female and they're talking, and if you watch closely, you'll see the flirtation, the romantic dance between the two of them just through their body movements. That's a whole form of communication. And many animals in the animal kingdom communicate that way in mating. So when you learn to look at the signs and symbols and interpret them correctly, they can tell you a wealth of information, which is why many oracles are pictorial. You'll see that there's images on them. And this is why the ancient Kemetic people, Egyptians, use hieroglyphics, the Metu Neter, because it communicated to the subconscious mind and it communicated a wealth of information. So with that fact understood, that we live in an energetic universe, it is a universe that is consciousness, and that when you ask, it will respond in kind to your question or your query. And if you find you have trouble doing that, then you need to go to a diviner. But again, the importance of exploring your theme or your mission in this lifetime will set you up for the next life. Now, there's another thing I want to point out, and we have to really get to the heart of this. Many Egyptologists have said, or they often say, that the Egyptians had a love for death, or they worshiped death, which is so incorrect. When you are a whole brain thinker, when you think with the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, then you understand there is no fear to death. You do not fear death because you have studied death as a science. Because you know death is merely a transition point to your next life. And that there is no hell. And because there's an aspect to God, which is Ma'at, and Ma'at is divine love and justice. What is justice? Justice is balance. Ma'at, God, is seeking balance, not punishment. In fact, when you get to the other realms, or you ascend to the other realms, like fifth dimension and things like that, you'll find that the concept of right or wrong does not exist in those realms, because there's just oneness. Okay? And you can't transgress against yourself, because you are all and everything. You exist at every point in space time, or you cannot. Consciousness has the property of non-locality. So who you are cannot be tied down to any one point. So what I'm saying with that is, as you exist here, which you perceive is a fixed point in space and time, you are existing in multiple dimensions, multiple parallel worlds, infinite. But you don't perceive them with your conscious self at this point that exists in this realm. But there is another aspect to you, a higher mind, that does perceive all that there is and all your experiences at once. It's capable of perceiving the infinite numbers of you who have individualized yourself so that you can have these different perspectives on things. And I'm gonna let you in a little secret, okay? And this is going to like really, really shock people and freak people out, but it's the truth, you know, because once you follow this line of logic, Sebeck is logic, and he's a master of logic, you know, you'll find this. When you look at the very beginning of everything, which there is really no beginning, because there is just the eternal now moment. But let's just say at the very beginning of all, there was the one, and that was Neter, or Nebuchadnezzar, as the ancient Kemetic people call God, meaning Lord of all. And God looked back at his consciousness and therefore became two. The one became two. Now, when you think about that, this consciousness that we refer to as God was only conscious of being conscious, and it didn't have a separate thought, because having a separate thought would individualize itself. And it did do that. The one became two and the two became three. There you have the Holy Trinity. All right. But let me say this. When we speak about things, for example, of passing on, going to the inner planes, right? And going before Ma'at and Osir for judgment. And Ma'at places the feather on one side of the scale and your heart on another side. And if the feather doesn't, if the heart doesn't weigh lighter than the feather, then this creature would devour your soul. Now, understand that when we refer to things like Ma'at, Sebek, Tehuti, or God, these aspects don't exist. The idea that you have of God does not exist. Or let's put, and here's the thing I'm going to say. God does not exist in the perception that you have. Because to say God is to speak of an external outside entity. Do you understand? The reality is you are God, who has decided to individualize itself to gain multiple infinite experiences. So the idea of a God or gods is erroneous. That's an incorrect term or incorrect idea or ideology or religion. There is no outside. So the experience that you have of this physical realm is because you, God, commanded it so that you individualize yourself to experience these things. So we have to stop talking about things in terms of space-time, linear space-time, which is what we exist in, this fourth dimensional realm, 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. So we have to come up with a new language to correctly convey these things. Like, for example, when we pass on, and some say, well, you pass on and go to the inner planes. You don't go anywhere, because when you pass on, you are already at that level connected with all that there is. So there is no traveling. There is no going from point A to point B or point A to point Z. Because you're just experiencing things at a now moment. You're just experiencing it. There is no travel. There is nowhere to go because you're already there. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? I love this line from the movie, I think it was 2010, the year we made contact. And this is, I guess, the follow-up to 2001: A Space Odyssey, written by Arthur C. Clarke, famous science fiction writer. And in the film, if you watch it, Dave Bowman comes back as this ethereal being, and he's communicating with his wife. And he says, you know, look, I just wanted to say goodbye. Something's going to happen, and I love you, and goodbye. And she says to him, don't go. And his reply is, I'm already there. And I love that because that gives you the idea that there is no travel. There is nowhere to go because you are all everything, everywhere, experiencing all things. This is the reason why they do not want us to do meditations, trance, because when you start getting into right brain thinking, then you're getting into nonlinear space time, meaning all things exist at once. There is the omniverse. All things are connected. There's no way to travel because you're already there. I want to go to Alpha Centauri. You're already there. You just need to vibrate to that frequency to where you can consciously perceive Alpha Centauri. But you have a life everywhere. You have a life living in Kemet right now, in ancient Egypt right now, living as a cowboy, a cowgirl right now, living in Greeks, the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization, Mayan civilization, the Celtic civilization. You're experiencing all that right now. At this moment, right now. But we've been taught by historians that, oh, well, you know, time is linear. You have a past, you have a present, and your future. That is a lie. It's a bogus lie. In fact, let me let you in on this other little secret. Sorry, my throat is dry. I was singing opera yesterday. I'm just kidding. So here's a secret which you won't be told. Time, as we experience it now, travels backwards. No, not to the future, backwards. Let me explain. Scientists will, agree, quantum physicists will agree that the only thing that exists is the now moment. And that you are shifting through multiple now moments, which gives the illusion or the perception of movement. So you are shifting to parallel versions of you which are nothing more than now moments. Picture a film strip, and on the film strip you have different images of yourself, and you're moving from one frame to another frame to another frame, and each frame is a now moment. So you're just shifting through infinite number of frames, and that give you the idea of motion and movement. So you're already shifting through parallel worlds or parallel yous, versions of you, right? Now, with this understanding that time is really an illusion, it's a constructed concept. So what there really is the now moment. Now, if we understand that the now moment is the only thing that truly exists, but we have a memory of the past, right? And the reason that we have a memory of the past is because we're living in we're living in a hypnotic illusionary state, Maya. And we're given post-hypnotic suggestions. And when we're giving these suggestions by the mainstream media, by the oligarchy, we create and manufacture a three-dimensional or a fourth-dimensional experience, a holographic experience, right? And at that point, one thing, and because everything is contextual, everything is relational, one thing sets up another. So for example, if I'm drinking, and I gave this example before, of orange juice, right? For me to be able to drink this orange juice means that I have to be implanted with the idea of thirst, which is a past memory. So when the idea comes to you in the present moment, the past impetus is created to justify that present moment. So at the same time as you're given that post-hypnotic suggestion or that thought to create the reality before you, there has to be a justification for that thought or that idea by creating a past experience for it. This is why everything I say moves backwards, because the justification is set up for the present. Now, when we think about things, and I've said this before, like slavery, different horrific things in the past, I said, do they truly, did those things truly happen? Give me another example. Let me just take this a little bit deeper with you. If I tell you that the predominant people of color who represent the majority on the planet, people of color of melanated complexion, represent the majority on this planet, and people who don't have melanin or hue represent the minority. Now, if I tell that dominant population that they are inferior and that they've always been inferior, then that creates a type of past to justify that inferiority complex. So then the idea of oppression and things of that nature come up. And things like slavery start to come up. Now, what I ask is this. These ideas and viruses, which I call racism or sexism and things like that, they were specifically injected into the psyche of the planet to create this illusionary past to create the present. Okay, tongue twister there. Not a tongue twister, but that's kind of like a thought loop. So if you have something that has been fed to you to where it creates a false past, then it then sets up the current present moment. We know through hypnotherapy that if a hypnotist goes into your psyche and alters the idea of the past experiences you have, they actually change who you are now. And I submit to you, it also changes the fourth dimensional experience that you'll have and interact with. Okay? So going back to what I was saying before. Now, what's critically important is that you understand and explore the theme of this present lifetime. Because if you don't do that, you will find yourself beset with problems, challenges, obstructions, and you'll say, well, why is all this happening? And you won't have a clue. And again, reiterating the point, this sets you up to keep repeating, or your soul to keep being recycled. And we don't want that. So we need to stop the recycling of your soul by accomplishing the task in this lifetime. And as I said before, some people are trying to find love and they don't realize they were separated by their lovers in the past, and they can find these people in the present day. And if you had a sister in the past and something tragically happened and you find that there's this girl that you just have this connection with, well, because she was your sister, that's what it is. So these connections are meant to be explored, but we're not doing that because, they don't want us to understand all of this knowledge of the right brain, and they want us to fear death and fear the inner planes, and they want us to see things as concrete, and that the only thing that exists is just what you can feel, hear, see, and taste, and there's nothing else. There's no metaphysical realm and no alternate dimensions and all that. And as long as they keep us trapped in that type of mindset, we will keep incarnating, and we will forever be beset with these problems that we see today in the world, when these things can be cleared up very easily. It's by everyone understanding that there is a karmatic debt, a debt that we have to pay off with each life. And if you don't pay that debt off, then you have to come back and experience it again to pay that debt. There are certain people in their past life who were perpetrators of crimes, and they come in this lifetime, and now they're the victims. And they want to know, well, why am I always the victim in this life? Why are always these things happening to me? Because you may have done some unscrupulous things in the past life. This is why you're paying that debt off in this life, all right? So I encourage you to either, number one, seek out a diviner who can do an oracle reading, who can explain who you were in the past and tell you what your incarnation objective is in this present life, which the theme you have to explore. Or you start understanding how to communicate with the energetic universe, ask the questions that see the signs and symbols that can tell you the answers. Really, you're talking to yourself. You're just asking yourself, who are you? You're God man, God woman, yourself. That's who you are, your true self. Not the physical Geb being, not the Sahu, the animal spirit. You are God, consciousness, all seeing, existing in all places at once. All right? So listen, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to get an oracle reading, you can click the link below. And I encourage you to subscribe to my Patreon campaign, where you'll get more in-depth information on these subjects. So listen, I wish you a happy and prosperous life. And that's all for now. This is Gasakma Keparu, and Amun Ra.